The NFL season is upon us as tonight, Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens will take on Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs in an AFC Championship rematch. And of course, with the 2024 NFL season here, with all fantasy teams drafted, with all bets being made, it is time for me to reveal my week one money line predictions and my five best bets for week one of the 2024 NFL season. Welcome into a brand new NFL season. I am Brandon Lewis, the host, the producer, the founder of Brandon's World. We are in collaboration with the one, the only Voltage Live. Now, in case you are new here to the podcast, we get a lot of new people coming in, of course, for the new NFL season. Usually, we do a podcast, of course, on Tuesdays and Thursdays. This week was Monday because of Labor Day. On Tuesday, I will come in here and I will break down all 16 NFL Week 1 games in every single NFL game on the calendar throughout the season. We'll talk wrestling, we'll talk college football. Usually, Tuesdays and Thursdays are our big shows, obviously, during football season. Then on Thursdays, along with other happenings in the sports world, I am going to give you my money line predictions as well as my best bets. So what I do is I go for every single game on the calendar. I will tell you who I think will win the game outright. Then I'll pick five games where I bet the spread. That's what I call my best bets. And for this year, these odds are all presented by FanDuel. And as we jump in here to week one of the 2024 NFL season, I can tell you there's not a lot of games on this board I love. Week one is always strange, in my humble opinion. We know there is a lot of upsets. We know that teams do not play a lot in preseason anymore. We know a lot of these, new schemes and new coaches trying to figure things out. So there's a lot of wacky stuff that happens in week one. That's why the numbers on a lot of these games have not changed as much. There's a lot of 50-50 outcomes, in my opinion. This may be the best week one slate in NFL history. And I'm not joking because there's only a couple games on this entire list that I do not want to watch. And I do pay for the in Sunday ticket package. It is the one sport I pay, and I watch nearly, whatever I can, a lot of snaps of every single game during the NFL season. You guys know the NFL is my favorite sport. I'm trying to get more into college football. USC obviously pulls the upset against LSU Sunday night. I talk more college football with my buddy Josh Unger as we do a show in collaboration with Voltage Live called Championship Rings that just aired on Tuesday night. That link is also in the description below. But without further ado, let's get into week one of the 2024 NFL season. And we are starting things off here with the Baltimore Ravens at the Kansas City Chiefs. And listen, I am not only going to take the Chiefs to win this game, but I am best betting the Kansas City Chiefs at -3. The Chiefs are favored by 3 points. I think last year, Kansas City, they obviously lost to Detroit in the opener. A lot of that had to do with Travis Kelce was banged up. They had issues with drops. We saw the receiving core was not as good as it was a year ago. I think that experience is going to help Kansas City overcome their week one woes this year. I don't think they want to start off 0-2, and they know they got Joe Burrow coming into their house the week after. I said it Tuesday night on Championship Rings. I do not think the Chiefs are going to start 2-0, and if they do, the rest of the AFC is in trouble. I think they'll start 1-1. If they beat Baltimore, they'll lose to Cincinnati. If they lose to Baltimore, they'll beat Cincinnati. I think the Chiefs are just in the Ravens' head. And this is arguably a must-win game for Baltimore psychologically because of the way they played in that AFC Championship game. It was one of the worst designs, in my opinion, in terms of offensive scheming and offensive game plans that we have seen. And so from offensive coordinator Todd Monken. At Baltimore, they did lose Mike McDonald, their defensive coordinator. He is now in Seattle as the Seahawks head coach. So we'll see if Zach Orr, who is the second youngest coordinator in the NFL, we'll see if it takes time for him to sort of implement his style for the Baltimore Ravens. They also lost Patrick Queen on the defense side of the ball. He goes to Pittsburgh. Now they're trying to implement Derrick Henry. They lose a big part of their offense, in my opinion, last year to Odell Beckham. Can a Duvernay step up here with the likes of Zay Flowers, Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews? So for the Baltimore Ravens, again, I think they have to play well. If Lamar Jackson plays well, though, and the Ravens lose, psychologically, that's going to be damning to them. They have to come out and make a statement. The Kansas City Chiefs know that. There's a lot of pressure in the world. And the one difference, in my opinion, between this year week one and last year week one is, of course, Travis Kelce is going to play this year week one. He did not play, if you remember, against Detroit in the opener last year, as well as everybody's favorite singer Taylor Swift will be in the crowd. So for that reason, I think the Ravens are psychologically damaged. I don't think Derrick Henry is going to be as big of an impact for the Ravens as people think. I like Kansas City to not only win the game, but cover the 3 points. Next game, we're going down to Brazil. Friday night, streaming exclusively on Peacock. And for the record, I don't know why this game is being played in Brazil. I don't love it necessarily, in my opinion. Obviously, we know what the wildfires are going on there, and then they got some political thing going on with Elon Musk, where Twitter is not available in the country. Eagles players have said that they've been told they can't go out of their hotel room. Both teams do not want to be there. I think this could be a very sloppy game. Green Bay has a new defensive coordinator in the former Boston College head coach, and obviously Vic Fangio comes over from Miami to be the Eagles' new defensive coordinator. Not only that, but Kellen Moore is the new OC, so there's a lot of new there. Now, the Eagles, the addition of Saquon Barkley, I think will be huge. Coming over from the New York Giants, I think Saquon's going to have a career year for my beloved Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously, with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith on the outside. For Green Bay, for me, there's a lot to prove. I've been saying it all offseason. Jordan Love got paid, yes, but you basically paid him off 8 games. Green Bay was 6-8, and they defeated Bryce Young, Jared Hall, and Justin Fields last year, the last 3 games of the year, to get into the postseason. And while Jordan Love was phenomenal in the postseason, I just need to see more. And I think the loss of Aaron Jones, and obviously AJ Dillon now hurt, replacing him with Josh Jacobs, who I think is a good back, but I don't think he's better than Aaron Jones. That was a questionable decision for me. And again, Philadelphia, there's a lot of new. Is it going to take time for the scheme to get implemented? Potentially here. But I think the same could be said about Green Bay's defense. I think this could be a 27-24 type game. I think my Philadelphia Eagles are going to try to put the stigma of the 2023 season behind them. The only way to do that is to win the game. I'll be honest, I'm not 100% sure they're going to win this game. The line is 2.5, which feels about right to me. I'm not going to best bet it, but I'll take Philly in the money line. Arizona at Buffalo. This may shock you, but there is always a week one surprise. And in my opinion, this week one this year's surprise is to not only take Arizona plus 6.5 in best bets. I think it's way too many points, but I am taking Arizona to defeat Buffalo and win outright. I think the Cardinals are going to be one of the most shocking teams in the league. People forget that last year they were in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes. And then obviously Kyler Murray comes back. They decided not bench Kyler Murray. They play with him down the stretch. They're competitive. They win games. They still get the number 4 overall pick in the draft. And Marvin Harrison Jr., here he comes. And I think he's going to be a Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase type receiver where he comes in day one, walk in, puts up a ton of numbers, and the Arizona Cardinals, in my opinion, will walk into Buffalo, where there's a lot of new in Buffalo. Yes, Joe Brady is still the OC after he took over from Ken Dorsey midway through last season, but Stephon Diggs is gone, and they're counting on guys like MVS and rookie Keon Coleman and Curtis Samuel to step up and produce. There's going to be a lot of two tight end sets here with Buffalo. Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, obviously James Cook, the running back, I like. But they lost Matt Milano, their best tackling linebacker. They lost Jordan Poyer in the secondary. They lost Tre'Davious White in the secondary. There's a lot of losses there for Buffalo that I think it's going to take some time for them. And again, Jonathan Gannon and these Cardinals have played hard. Kyler Murray now is at a full offseason in the system. They bring in the third most draft picks in the league outside of the Packers and the Rams. I think the Cardinals are a very dangerous third or fourth place team in a very vaunted NFC West. And even though they're going west to east, I think they can shock Buffalo. They are the shock in week one. Buffalo is not ready to play, and Arizona not only covers, but they pull off the upset. New England at Cincinnati. Now, this game started at 9.5, somewhere 10. It's been bet down to 7.5. So money is obviously on New England. This is the debut of Gerard Mayo. And again, Jacoby Brissett's going to be starting. And we don't know what New England's going to be this year. We presume they're going to be bad. They don't have a lot of pieces offensively outside of the little slot kid in Douglas. And obviously, Ramondre Stevenson's a good back. And Under Henry is there, but the offensive line is in shambles. Now, Cincinnati's defense is not great, but Trey Anderson, Sam Hubbard still there, obviously, as good pass rushers. And you guys know I'm high on the Bengals this year. When I made my NFL predictions on Monday, I had the Cincinnati Bengals as the number one seed in the AFC. Give me a healthy Joe Burrow, a healthy Jamar Chase. E. Higgins is back. They bring over Jermaine Burton from Alabama to replace Tyler Boyd. Now, Callahan, the offensive coordinator, is the new head coach in Tennessee, but Zach Taylor, excuse me, the head coach of the Bengals, was the offensive play caller anyway. I don't think that's going to be that big of a deal. I think Cincinnati covers. I'm always weary of big favorites in week one. Again, I think that week one is weird. Could New England backdoor cover? Sure, and keep it close. Excuse me, I said I think Cincinnati covers. I think Cincinnati wins the game. I'm picking the Bengals in Survivor this week. I think that they are the only team in Survivor that I am comfortable 100% saying they will win the game. That's how, again, close I think these week one matchups are. Then we got Pittsburgh at Atlanta, the Arthur Smith revenge game. New offensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Arthur Smith, is trying to reinvent the wheel in Pittsburgh that they have not seen since Ben Roethlisberger retired. They tried it with Kenny Pickett. It did not work. They did make the playoffs and win 10 games last year with, Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph quarterbacking the team. But this is also a new look Atlanta Falcons team. We mentioned no more Arthur Smith as head coach. Now they got Raheem Morris, the former Rams defensive coordinator, former Tampa Bay head coach, now in his second stint as a head coach in Atlanta. They bring over Kirk Cousins to replace Desmond Ritter. There's a lot of hype around the Atlanta Falcons this year, not only because of what we think. The new offensive coordinator, Zach Robinson, who comes to that Sean McVay, Kevin O'Connell, Kyle Shanahan, Kevin Stefanski, Matt LaFleur type scheme in Atlanta, but also because of the additions of Matthew Judon and Justin Simmons, excuse me, the two free agent acquisitions they just added on the defense side of the ball during the past week. Listen, again, week one is weird, and we know Mike Tomlin as an underdog is very good. We know how bad the Steelers offense looked in preseason. Both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields looked horrible. But again, it's preseason football. Take it with a grain of salt. I said in my predictions, I think Atlanta has the toughest first three games in the NFL. Home against Pittsburgh, at Philadelphia on a Monday night versus Kansas City. I think Atlanta could start 0-3 and actually still win the NFC South. The Steelers may have the hardest last 8 games in the NFL, where they have all 6 of their division games, plus Kansas City and Philadelphia. The Steelers need this game more than Atlanta. For that reason, I'm not going to best bet it because, again, I think it's a 50-50 game here, but I like Pittsburgh to win outright here against the Atlanta Falcons. Jaguars at Dolphins. Miami's favored by 3.5. I'm taking Miami to not only win, but cover the 3.5. And I like the Jaguars. I think Doug Peterson, Trevor Lawrence, they obviously started off real hot last year, 8-3. Then Trevor Lawrence had that foot injury and they collapsed. They lost the division to Houston. They did not even make the postseason. I think Jacksonville is out for a little bit of a revenge tour this year, a lot like Philadelphia. I actually think losing Calvin Ridley to Tennessee will help Trevor Lawrence. They bring in Gabe Davis. They have Christian Kirk. They have Evan Ingram. They have Travis Etienne. I think they're going to spread the football more around. Now, Miami, though, we know early in the season, they love to speed roast people. And we know Mike McDaniel, a lot like Andy Reid, and offensive coaches always seem to be ahead of defensive coaches early in September with new plays and new wrinkles that the defensive coaches have not seen a lot yet. We know Miami can score with the most of them in September and October. We saw what they did at Denver. They put up 70 points in week 3 a year ago. I think Miami puts them a lot of points. I think they cover the 3.5. I think Jacksonville will keep it competitive, but I don't think offensively they're going to be able to keep up with the Dolphins. Then we have the Houston Texans at the rare week 1 dog this year in the NFL, the Indianapolis Colts. Houston is favored by 2.5. And I'm going to tell you right now, I am not touching this game. I am not betting it. Now, I am going to pick the Houston Texans to win. Obviously, there's a lot of pressure on the Texans last year. We were all mesmerized at what CJ Stroud, D'Amico Ryans, Tank Dell, offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick, and those young Houston Texans, along with Will Anderson, did, reshaping the franchise in a year, taking the division away from the Jaguars, winning a playoff game against the Browns, then going down to the wire against Baltimore in the divisional round. Now, this year they add Stephon Diggs from Buffalo, they add Joe Mixon from Cincinnati, and Houston is looking to make themselves a perennial Super Bowl contender. And I believe it is now or never for the Houston Texans because I think Bobby Slowick is a genius offensive mind, and they're going to get him and coaching offers at the end of this season. But when it comes to this game specifically, listen, I think the AFC South is better, and the Indianapolis Colts, they won 8 games last year with Gardner Minshew quarterbacking the team and Anthony Richardson not finishing a game. There's not a ton of tape on Anthony Richardson and the Colts, and in week 2 last year, before CJ Stroud did his thing, the Indianapolis Colts took down the Houston Texans, and they were this close to beating the Texans and being in that wild card round rather than Houston last year in week 18. So the Colts are going to keep this close. I think this is a true 50-50 coin flip type game. Now, the spread here is saying that if this game was in Houston, Houston would be favored by 5. I don't agree with that at all because, of course, you get 3 points for home field. Again, I think these two teams are very similar. I think the Colts are going to be battling for a playoff spot this year, and it would not surprise me if they are in the playoffs. I just think Houston's additions may be too much for Indianapolis early on. Texans are going to look to prove that they are for real. They get the victory. Then we have Tennessee at Chicago, and this will be my 4th best bet. I am taking the Bears -4.5. I think this is the best line of the week. I would take this anytime, any day. I think that the Tennessee Titans, again, I get why some people are pretty high on the Titans because you take away their weapons, right? They do have Calvin Ridley. They have DeAndre Hopkins. They have Tyler Boyd now. They bring over Tony Power. They have a new head coach in Callahan, the former OC in Cincinnati. I just don't think Will Levis is the guy, and I am so excited to watch the debut of number 18 in Chicago, Caleb Williams. I've said it all offseason. I have never seen a team improve so much potentially on one side of the ball than the Bears have done on the offensive side of the ball. When you look at the addition of obviously Caleb Williams over Justin Fields, adding Roma Dunze in, adding Keenan Allen at that wide receiver spot. You have DeAndre Swift now at running back. You got obviously Cole Kmet still at tight end. Their offensive line is better than average. We know they had a top 10 defense at the end of the year once they made the trade for Montez Sweat at the trade deadline. I think the Bears are gonna be really good. I think the Titans are gonna be really bad. I think the Bears make a statement here. And I think the Bears have some games, later in the season where you could consider taking Chicago here as a survivor pick. Like I said earlier, I'm taking Cincinnati, but I'm all in on the Bears here, -4.5. Now, the next game, I was highly considering betting this game, Vikings -1.5, because I like Minnesota here in this spot. But again, it's week one. This would be the one game that we all think, Vikings are going to win. The Giants are not going to be very good. They lose Saquon Barkley. They're a disaster. But it's still Sam Darnold and Minnesota. And even though I think Darnold's going to have a very good year, I think it's hard for you to not have a good year with those weapons in Minnesota. They bring in Aaron Jones now at running back. You still got Jefferson. You still got Addison. TJ Hawkinson's going to be out for the first few weeks of the season, and Darnold loves his tight ends, which is again why I'm a little hesitant. Not only that, but Minnesota's offensive line outside of Darisaw and left tackle is not great, and the Giants' strength, obviously, with Dexter Lawrence and now Brian Burns coming over from Carolina, is the defensive line. Is there a world where Malik Neighbors goes off the LSU product against Justin Jefferson and, the Giants do pull off a shocking upset? Yeah, it's possible. I mean, the Giants did it to Tennessee in week one in 2022 on their way to that 9-8 season when they beat the Vikings in the wild card round. So, anything's possible. You guys know how I feel about the Giants this year, though. I think they're going to be bad. I'll take the Vikings to win the game. But again, week one here, this feels like to me a typical week one trap game. The final 1 o'clock game, Carolina at New Orleans. You guys know last year, admittedly, my biggest miss was the Carolina Panthers. I didn't know what to think of the NFC South, okay? I didn't know Baker Mayfield was going to do good in Tampa. I didn't trust Desmond Ritter in Atlanta. I didn't trust Derek Carr in New Orleans. I took my swing and backed Frank Reich, who I thought was a very good offensive coach. Turned out I was wrong on that. I was completely wrong on the Carolina Panthers. But now this year, I'm not totally back on the Panthers bandwagon, but I think they're going to be better than New Orleans. The Saints, they have a great defense. Obviously, the addition of Chase Young, Demario Davis at linebacker. You still got Cam Jordan there. You still got Marshawn Lattimore there. You still got the Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu there. It's just their head coach is Dennis Allen. And Derek Carr looked washed a year ago. Chris Olave looked washed. Their offensive line is in shambles, and I think Chris Olave is their only reliable target. I think the addition of Deontay Johnson to go alongside Adam Thielen, they drafted the kid out of Ole Miss. You have Dave Canales, who's a young offensive mind who has gotten the best out of Baker Mayfield. He's gotten the best out of Geno Smith. I think Bryce Young, I'm going to wash away his rookie year like I did when Trevor Lawrence had Urban Meyer as his head coach. I think Carolina is going to win games. I think they're going to be competitive. And again, I don't trust it, so I'm not going to bet it. But I like the Panthers here outright to not only cover or to not only take the 3.5, but win outright as a 3.5 point dog at New Orleans. Raiders at Chargers. I like the Chargers to win this game, and I was considering again betting the Chargers here at -3, but I just got to see this Jim Harbaugh Chargers team before I can bet them. It's Jim Harbaugh's debut. It's technically Antonio Pierce's debut as a full-time head coach, and we talked about Las Vegas. Like, I like Vegas's weapons better than the Chargers' weapons. Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, you got Brock Bowers, you got Michael Mayer. The only thing they don't really have is a quarterback, and their quarterback's going to be Gardner Minshew. And when Gardner Minshew has not been with Shane Steichen, he's been closer to bad Gardner Minshew than good Gardner Minshew. And the Chargers, we know they doubled down on the offensive side of the ball and the offensive line, I should say. They drafted Joe Alt to play right tackle. You're going to have Rashawn Slater at left tackle. Justin Herbert is coming off that plantar fascia injury, which again worries me. I think this is going to be a low scoring game. I think it's going to be pound the football with Gus Edwards, with J.K. Dobbins, with Greg Roman, who obviously not only coached those guys in Baltimore, he was John Harbaugh's OC, but he was Jim Harbaugh's OC in San Francisco as well. I think Justin Herbert's going to be very efficient. I think the Chargers are going to look different. I think they're going to be more physical than the Raiders. I think this is gonna be a low scoring game. Again, I just gotta see it before I bet it, but I do like the Chargers to win the game. Denver at Seattle. I am so tempted to take Denver plus 5.5, though I won't because Bo Nix is new. He's a rookie, and you never know. He may be overwhelmed. And the thing here is, Seattle's got a new head coach in Mike McDonald. Now, you can watch tape of what he did with the Baltimore Ravens last year, but we don't know what he's going to do with the Seattle Seahawks unit, where they cut both of their starting safeties in Quan Driggs and Jamal Adams to start the season. So I don't know what to make of Seattle, and Denver also, by the way, just signed Patrick Surtain to an extension, and I like both of these rosters. Denver, they got so many good weapons, in my opinion, that they cut Tim Patrick. They have a bunch of backs. Corwin Sutton is still there. Their offensive line was rebuilt last year under Sean Payton, and Bo Nix looked like maybe even more than Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels, the most pro-ready quarterback to come in and win games right away. But Seattle, you got the DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Tyler Lockett, Kenneth Walker, all those weapons all over the place, which is why this game for me is very hard to handicap. I'm gonna take Denver. I think Bo Nix and Sean Payne come out with a better game plan than Mike McDonald and crew, and that's a very hard environment in Seattle to win. But again, I think offensive coaches have the advantage over defensive coaches early in the season. I'm not confident in it, but I'll take Denver here to win the game. Again, I'm not gonna bet them, which is why I'm not confident in it. Last year, again, I went 9-7 week one in the money line. I'm expecting to be about 500 this year. It's week one. You got to take some swings. Washington at Tampa Bay. I actually am going to take Washington, my NFC East divisional rival, to not only plus 3.5, but win this game outright against Tampa Bay. I think the new addition of Dan Quinn as the defensive coordinator in Washington, with a new owner, new rookie quarterback in Jane Daniels, new offensive play caller in the former Arizona head coach Cliff Kingsbury. I think Washington is going to shock Tampa week one. I don't think Todd Bowles' defense is going to know what to expect. And I think it's going to take a little bit of a learning curve for Tampa and Baker Mayfield under the new OC now that Dave Canales is in Carolina. We know Baker Mayfield is sometimes he's great, sometimes he's not, sometimes he wakes up dangerous, sometimes he doesn't. I think Dan Quinn's going to bring a lot of different to Washington. Again, a lot like Mike McDonald. There's not a lot. You can study his Cowboy film, but there's a lot of unknown with Washington that I think week one is the advantage for. I think Jaden Daniels is a rookie quarterback, could have an RG3-S performance where he just lights it up week one. And again, my note 8 theory in the NFL, which is these coaches spend so much time watching tape that when they don't have tape on players and the schemes, they struggle early to stop them. So I think Washington is going to bring out some new wrinkles, new offense, new everything. I think they're going to surprise people, and I think that starts with Tampa Bay here in week one. Now, Cowboys at the Browns. This is a very hard game to handicap for me. I'm going to take the Browns to win a very low scoring game. The line is 2.5, which to me is about right. And I know this is America's Game of the Week. I know it's Tom Brady's broadcasting debut, but for me, there's just not a lot of on this game. I mean, Deshaun Watson and the Browns, I already told you during my NFL predictions, I don't know how to feel about the Browns. Their roster is as good as Cincinnati. It's as good as Baltimore's. I just don't trust the Stefanski Deshaun Watson relationship. You went on that. The Browns offensive line is in shambles. They're going to be starting backups. Jack Conklin, who has not played left tackle in a few years, is going to move from right to left. How he deals with Michael Parsons is going to be very interesting. The Browns also lost Bill Callahan, the Hall of Fame offensive line coach, who goes to Tennessee with his son Brian. So there's a lot of new there in Cleveland. And Dallas, to me, is a pop gun offense. It's CeeDee Lamb and what else? And they don't have a run game. Ezekiel Elliott's going to be their starting running back, and he's been washed even before he left Dallas to go to New England. So I don't know. I think this is going to be a slugfest. I think Tom Brady's first game on Fox is going to be a slugfest. I think the Browns, who were historic defensively at home this last year, they were not obviously on the road. Difference of 20 points between home and road games. I haven't seen anything like it. But I think in week one, the Browns' schedule is harder than Dallas's. They have a tough road. I think the Browns actually need this game more than Dallas because I think the Browns going to Jacksonville is a harder game week two than Dallas hosting New Orleans. If Dallas loses this game, they can bounce back. If the Browns lose this game, there's a real possibility they could start off the year 0-2. So for that reason, I got the Browns winning their home opener for the first time in nearly 20 years. Browns over the Cowboys. Rams at the Lions. I think this is going to be a very similar game to the wild card game last year. This game is on Sunday Night Football. The line is 3.5. I would take the Rams side of it. I think this is going to be a field goal game. It could come down to who has the ball last. For the Rams, it's going to be very interesting. Raheem Morris is out. They have a new defensive coordinator. Aaron Donald is no longer there. Are they going to be able to get the consistent pass rush that they were getting? And if Matthew Stafford stays healthy, we know they have Cooper Kupp. We know they have Kyron Williams. I want to see the rookie Blake Orm out of Michigan, how he fits in that scheme. With Sean McVay calling plays, they're going to put up points. But we know Dan Campbell and we know Jared Goff. They play, I think it's 14 out of 17 or something like that, games in a dome this year. And I always said when Jared Goff's in the dome, he plays like an MVP type quarterback. I think the fact that Ben Johnson is back, he declined the commander's job to take one more stab with the Lions. So did Aaron Glenn, their defensive coordinator. They bring in Tyron Arnold, they bring in other members to revamp that secondary. I think the Lions are primed for a big year this year. You guys know in my predictions on Monday, I did pick this matchup to be a divisional round matchup in the postseason. And I also picked the Detroit Lions to win the Super Bowl this year. I think it starts off with a week one game. Again, I'm not going to bet it. The line is pretty close to what it should be, but I like the Lions to win at home. And then San Francisco and the Jets. Obviously, Monday Night Football in the Bay. And the Niners, not only do they have Brandon Ayuk back, but now they have Trent Williams back as well in an interesting turn of events because just as about a week ago, this game, which started out when the season came out at 6.5, was bet down to 3.5. Now it's back up to 4.5 with that news of Brandon Ayuk and Trent Williams being back for San Francisco. The Niners have had a very noisy offseason, and there's a lot of thoughts out there they could lose the division to the Rams. I'm not one of those people, but I do believe there's pressure on San Francisco to win this game because there's pressure on San Francisco to win the whole thing this year. Because if they do not, they're going to have to blow up some of this roster. They have Pro Bowlers at every level, literally on the team. Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Trent Williams, Nick Bosa, Javon Hargrave, Fred Warner, Ufunga. The New York Jets. We know Aaron Rodgers is coming off his Achilles. You guys know how I feel about the Jets this season. They upgraded their offensive line. They bring in Mike Williams as a number two wide receiver to complement Garrett Wilson. That defense is still very good, whether Hassan Reddick is going to be there or not. And I think the New York Jets this year are primed to win the AFC East. With that being said, I think the Jets can lose this game and be fine. They got Tennessee and New England and Denver all at home in the next 3 games. San Francisco's got a little bit of a tougher road and going at Minnesota week 2 where they lost last year. Then they got the Rams again. They got Arizona coming up. So there's some dicier games in there in San Francisco. They always typically struggle in week 1, except for last year when they absolutely annihilated the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I think the Niners, I think this game's pretty close. Could they win by a touchdown? Could the Jets also cover? Both those things could be true. I'll take San Francisco in the money line. So to recap, money line predictions for week 1. I got Kansas City over Baltimore. I got Philly over Green Bay. I have Arizona on the road over Buffalo. I have Cincinnati over New England. I have Pittsburgh over Atlanta. I have Miami over Jacksonville. I have Houston on the road against Indianapolis. Chicago at home against Tennessee. Minnesota on the road against the Giants. Carolina on the road against the Saints. The Chargers at home against the Raiders. Denver on the road defeating Seattle. Washington on the road defeating Tampa. Cleveland at home defeating Dallas. Detroit at home defeating the Rams. And the Niners Monday night at home defeating the Jets. My 5 best bets for week 1 of the 2024 NFL season are Kansas City -3 at home. I think they cover against Baltimore. I think Arizona +6.5. Not only am I taking them to win outright, but that means that they will cover against the Buffalo Bills. I am taking the Miami Dolphins -3.5 to cover against Jacksonville. I'm taking Chicago to cover 4.5 at home against the Tennessee Titans. And then I'm taking the Commanders on the road +3.5 to not only cover but win outright against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like that clip from the Brands World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brands World podcast right here on YouTube.